haven't been delivering towards the end of the split, or not to the highest level that we'd come to expect.
Splyce are the team to experiment. They are the team to bring crazy stuff out.
Splyce turn their attention to the Nexus turret, and they turn the game around from a 4,000 gold deficit for a clean 2-0.
In a best-of-5 series, especially against a team that has rookies, if we play like as good as I know we can, then we should be able to beat them.
First split in LCS, it would be really nice if I can go to Hamburg.
It's just an absolute slaughter. Misfits in absolute control.
Splyce isn't flawless as well. I don't think it should be a problem. I'm pretty sure we can win against Splyce.
Only the playoffs are like the most important thing.
It's not going to be easy, of course.
Welcome to the moment you've all been waiting for, the start of the playoffs. The best teams in Europe are ready to fight for a chance at glory in Hamburg later this month. And it all starts today with Misfits versus Splyce. As we can see there, everyone's setting up on stage. Hans Sama getting ready for his first playoff game here in the European LCS in the first split, as well as Alfari and Cacao talking some strats, or maybe not exactly, as well as Ignar with their coach. Hello, everyone. I'm EpicSkillshot supporter, and joining me here in the studio, as you may have heard already, is Martin de Fischer Lunge and Rocket Nubar Maxlor. Sarafian, welcome, gentlemen. Welcome, Maxlor. Thank you so much for joining us, even though it might be a bit, obviously you would have rather played, but you guys put up a great fight and you get to assist us here in the analysis.
Yeah, I mean, it's good to be here, I guess, and it's good to see the matches coming up. I think it's pretty hyped. Yeah,
it is hype. It's finally time, playoffs. We've been waiting for this a whole split. You have anything to say?
No, I mean, I'm really hyped we're here now with playoffs, because I feel like for the last few weeks it was almost locked in with most of the teams, and we just wanted to get to these BO5s without Rocket, of course.
Yeah, well, good point. It was really close, and with the finals only 2 weeks away, here is how the spring champions will be decided. We just mentioned it. Fnatic, they made it at the last minute to qualify, as they beat Misfits on the last day of the spring round robin. And as we see it there, this might not be exactly how it plays out. There's a couple of interesting remarks, as there is a reseeding at play in the semifinals.
Yeah, a few different rules with the reseeding. Some of the things we have to look at is the lowest seed of the teams qualifying from the quarterfinals moving in. Obviously, we end up playing these first-place teams from each respective group. And the way we decide that is if two teams from the same group advance. So let's say we have Splyce and H2K advancing. They're obviously both in Group B. Then that means Group B is the stronger group, and the lowest seeded team, Splyce, will then take on Unicorns of Love, because Unicorns of Love will then be looked at as the strongest team. All the way around, if we then have teams from two different groups facing each other, qualifying, so against Splyce in this case, and let's say Fnatic, well, then you will just play cross-group in the semifinals. So Fnatic will play Unicorns of Love, and then Splyce will play G2. So there's some reseeding. Yep. There are some complicated rules around it, but it does make sense, don't worry.
It makes a lot of sense, a bit complicated, but we will, of course, update you guys every step of the way. But in today's best-of-5, there is one matchup that could prove to be a deciding factor. And James Stress O'Leary is here to step into the jungle for a closer look.
Thank you very much, Chugs. Yes, ahead of this playoff series, I want to take a look at the role that may be the most pivotal today and that has been the biggest change for both teams recently. To put everything in context, I want to first look at some of the recent trends for both teams, and that's by looking at goal difference, and one of the metrics we use to track who is ahead during the game. And this is predominantly at 15 minutes, this first column that we want to look at. We've split it into the entire split in rows 1 and 2, and then the last 5 series both teams played. So the first team to look at, Splyce, clearly slow off the mark to begin. The split has affected their overall numbers. But you can see in row 3 here, massive improvements for Splyce across the board with their gold leads. Misfits, however, a big gold drop-off when you look at their difference over the last 5 matches. It's been a rough few weeks for the Misfits, and we want to take a look at one of the reasons why perhaps that could be. And that's the man in the jungle, unfortunately, and the Cacao's stats have also been on the downturn throughout the ending portion of the split. Let's break it into one specific champion that everybody's talked about. Cacao, he's known for his Lee Sin, and when we look at his games overall, we've broken everything out week by week, different sections. The key component of this, the best part of the split was these weeks 3 to 6 for Kakao. You can see how strong his performances were. 10 of 11 games in weeks 3 to 6 were wins for Misfits, and 7 of those games were being played on Lee Sin for Kakao. A coincidence? I think not. Kakao has the highest kills and assists for any EU LCS player on Lee Sin, and it's really hard to understate how strong his Lee Sin is, but why haven't we been seeing it recently? Lee Sin wasn't banned at all versus Misfits in weeks 7 to 10, but they only played it in 2 games. You really have to start to wonder why Misfits opted away from this early playmaking jungler in their last few series. Maybe it was preparing for a playoff series. And their playoffs opponents, Splyce, have been on the upturn. Let's take a look at Trashy, because while it was a slow start for Trashy for the split, he's gone from rank 10 in gold difference of 15 to rank 5, a significant improvement. And when you look at his plays in the early game, it's not exactly hard to see why. He's gone to having the highest kills plus assists at 15 minutes of any jungler in the EU LCS in the last 5 series. That's a big improvement for Trashy, and it's been felt all the way through the Splyce lineup. As the teams kick off their playoff run, Splyce are on the upswing, while Misfits' recent results have left a lot of people asking if their team can reclaim their mid-split strength. If Splyce are able to get Trashy and Wonder going together, it might be enough to stop the LCS newcomers right in their tracks. But on the other hand, if the Misfits machine behind the scenes has their players prepared and in top form, it may be the newest LCS squad that's having the last cackle at the end of today. Back to the analyst desk, we want to hear more and break down that series ahead of this big best of 5.
Definitely so. Thank you so much for that breakdown. I want to ask Maxler, of course, immediately. Kakao was a very early MVP candidate. Those are the words that we'll be throwing around in the first weeks of the split, but yet there's been an evolution for both Trashy and Kakao. How do you think, or how do you reflect on their play over the split?
I think that Kakao and Trashy are kind of opposite, because Trashy had a really slow start. He was looking pretty bad, to be honest. And then suddenly, out of nowhere, he just gets really good over the course of the split. And then Kakao is the complete opposite. The first few weeks, he was just wrecking everyone. He looked like probably the best jungler in EU, and he's just dipped a lot right now. He's not looking that strong. It could partially be because of the Lee Sin pick, but I think that's mainly to do with either him not being able to play other champs as good as his Lee, or his team can't play on, they can't allow him to play another champ because they rely on him so much to play Lee Sin and make those engages.
We heard from the team a lot of talk about how the post-IEM jungle pathings that we saw in Europe didn't really fit Kakao too well. He took a lot of time to kind of pick them up, and then his style is very focused on pulling off some of these early ganks, and if he actually doesn't succeed, he does fall behind a little bit. And that is, I think, one of the reasons teams have been able to control him more. But again, it seems to me like they didn't pick Lee Sin because they needed to practice other things when they were almost already locked in playoffs. We're going to see it today unless it's banned.
We will see. And as we take a step back and look at the Misfits, obviously their first split in the LCS, and the beginning weeks were very, very impressive. And I think that's why we're being very critical of them, because we want to see them step up as the playoffs arrive.
Yeah, exactly. Like, very quickly, they became one of the best teams in Europe, and we didn't expect that from this new lineup. But if you look at week 7 and 10, just like Stress highlighted in the Telestrator segment, it's kind of stagnated. It's gone downhill in terms of the goal difference. They no longer get the early advantage we're used to seeing from them. And it's actually made them a very passive team, where it's very clear that once they're behind, Alfari or Power Vivo, like these kind of guys are not finding openings. They're not finding ways to start a fight. And then they kind of rely on Kakao. But when Kakao is not on Lee Sin, he's not finding the openings, and then no one is actually engaging. Like, then we need to see the bot lane do it. Give me Ashe, give me some Malstar supports if they can get it. Maybe that's the way for Misfits, but they've had a week now. And like, they were really passive against you guys when you played them a few weeks ago.
Yeah.
It needs to be different.
Yeah, it needs to be different, and that is what we are looking for. Obviously, this is their first split. They have said, you know, we want to get to Worlds at the end of it, but they also stated they wanted to get at least top 4. So they're going to have to do their best here versus Splyce. And let's talk about Splyce, who have a very similar story from last year. They were a challenger team coming in, and they didn't have as good of a spring split as Misfits have now. But this year, it's also been a slow start for them. Splyce in the beginning, as you mentioned, the early game wasn't on point, but it seems that they've really turned it around. Why do you think that is, Maxler?
I think it's mainly because Splyce have found their identity in when they play and their picks. Trashy and Wonder have really good synergy, and they play around each other really well. And I think that's what's been working for them in the past few weeks, that we've seen. And when we played against, for example, Trashy visited top lane a lot, and now the meta is a lot better for Wonder too, coming in with these like Fears and Cannon and stuff like this. It really suits the playstyle of Splyce, which is also similar to ours, where it's just 1-3-1, have Wonder with priority in the mid-late game, and then he can make plays or take towers.
And that's a really cool thing about this matchup, because Wonder and Trashy are doing so well now. It's up to Alfari and Kakao to match that. And I think they can. Like, that's the thing. Yes, we were critical about Misfits because we kind of judged them as a top team because they so quickly became one. But they are still a really, really strong lineup where player for player, they can match Splyce 100%. And I think Alfari Trashy versus Wonder... Alfari Kakao versus Wonder Trashy is literally the thing to watch.
Definitely a matchup to watch. So let's get to predictions. Maxler, who is going to win this? What score and why?
I think it's hard to tell, but I think I'm just going to trust my gut. I think it's going to be 3-1 to Splyce, mainly because Misfits have been they've only won a game against Fnatic in their group in the past few weeks. They've been looking really like mediocre or even bad in the mid-late game. They just can't do anything. And Splyce maybe they might be able to take a game off Splyce, snowballing the early game, or actually being able to play really good in a game or having a good draft. But Splyce, overall, I think, is just the better team.
I think Misfits, the last few weeks, were trying to test, how well they could perform on the non-comfort picks. And I think that is one of the reasons they looked very shaky. They didn't pick, to their strengths. I think we're going to see that now in this best-of-5 here in playoffs. I think the coaching staff 100% will have prepared this team properly. That's why I think it's going to be super close. I do agree Splyce will take it. But I'm saying 3-2. I actually think it's going to be such a close BO5.
Well, let's hope for 5 games, and let's see what the new kids on the block can do against Splyce as we send it over to our casters for Game 1.